Chapter 9 focuses on human resource management or HRM. It encompasses planning for attracting, developing, and retaining an effective workforce. Here we will touch on the important matters regarding HRM, but in Management 1150 you will dive more in depth on the topics and concepts that we will be introducing in this chapter. Specifically in this discussion, we will look at how HRM fits into the overall strategy of the organization, how to evaluate current and future employees, and how to ensure that who we are hiring are the right people. From hiring to compensation to legal matters, we will introduce various concepts that many of us are familiar with and the concepts that we will need to know for Management 1150. Human Resource Management, or HRM, consists of the activities managers perform to plan for, attract, develop, and retain an effective workforce. The fact that the old personnel department is now called the Human Resource Department is not just a cosmetic change. It is intended to suggest that the importance of staffing to a company's success. Although talking about people as a resource might seem to downgrade them to the same level as financial resources and material resource, in fact, people are an organization's most important resource. Knowledge workers add value to an organization by using their brains rather than their muscle and sweat. And as such, they are the most common type of worker in the 21st century organization. Three concepts are important in HRM. They are human capital, which is the economic or productive potential of employee knowledge, experience, and actions. Knowledge worker, who is someone whose occupation is principally concerned with generating or interpreting information as opposed to manual labor. And social capital, the economic or productive potential of strong, trusting, and cooperative relationships. All of these in some way can help you land a job. For example, a national survey of recruiters revealed that 74% had found the highest quality job applicants came through employee referrals. Employees hired through referrals also tend to stay longer at their jobs, a result of better person-organization fit. Strategic human resource planning consists of developing a systematic, comprehensive strategy for understanding the current employee needs and predicting future employee needs. When a company needs a lot of people with a specialized training to give the organization a competitive advantage, they must develop a systematic and comprehensive strategy for understanding current employee needs and predicting future employee needs. This figure shows how HRM fits within the larger strategic management process. Understanding current employee needs and predicting future employee needs are discussed next. So to plan for the future, you must understand the present, what today's staffing picture looks like. This requires that you or a trained specialist first do a job analysis and from that write a job description and a job specification. The purpose of the job analysis is to determine the basic elements of a job by observation and analysis. Then we have a job description. This summarizes what the holder of the job does and how and why he or she does it. And then we have job specification. This describes the minimum qualification of a person must have to perform a job successfully. So when you look at a job posting, you have the minimum qualifications. You need X amount of experience, you need this type of degree, you need these type of skills. So this is the job specification. The job description is essentially overall, what is the job? If you were customer service, for example, job, it would kind of outline the duties of that job. And then what specification or what qualifications do you need for that job description? HRM personnel need to be prepared in predicting the future needs of their company and the kind of employees they will need. They need to become more knowledgeable about the staffing the organization needs and where to find those employees. So let's take a look at question 1. Joe, a human resource specialist for Jersey Office Supplies, rides along with the furniture delivery people to observe the problems they are encountering and what activities they were required to perform. Joe is performing a If you answered D, job analysis, you are correct. Remember, a job analysis entails observation. So how do we find qualified people to fill positions? They can be recruited inside or outside the organization, and selecting the right person is done by reviewing an applicant's application, resume, references, conducting and interviewing and or taking employee tests. This recruiting process of locating and attracting qualified applicants for jobs is done by the HR department and is a part of the HRM process. Finding the right people whose skills, abilities, and characteristics to best suit your organization is important and can be done internally or externally. Hiring from the inside or internally means taking the people that are already working at your organization. And most vacant positions are filled internally throughout organizations everywhere. Externally hiring from the outside means attracting job applicants from outside the organization. This can be done in various ways, such as posting job vacancies in the newspaper or on sites such as Indeed, using employment agencies such like Kelly Services, or hiring executive recruiting firms, or by word of mouth, to name a few. Let's look at some advantages and disadvantages to internal and external recruiting. We have obviously, one of the advantages for internal recruiting is that we know what these employees are and what their skills are. We don't have to go outside and interview. That costs money to interview people, so we save money that way. So we already know what this candidate is like. They know what the culture of the organization is, so that's a huge advantage. However, a disadvantage is that we took somebody away from a certain department. Now there's a vacancy that's left there. Some advantages for external recruiting is that we have, these applicants have a new, fresh viewpoint, or maybe we bring in new specialized knowledge and experience. So that's a huge advantage. And a disadvantage is that, yes, it takes longer to recruit these people. We have to go through the interviewing process, which it costs money, or maybe that hiring that person is not the right person. Because we don't know what their skills are like, and we have to teach them the culture and all of that. So that is a process that's a disadvantage of hiring people from the outside. Whether the recruitment process turns up a handful of job applicants or thousands, now you turn to the selection process. A screening of job applicants to hire the best candidate involves three components. We need to look at background information, we need to conduct interviews, and maybe we need to do employee tests. Essentially, this becomes an exercise in prediction. How will the candidate perform on the job, and how long will he or she stay? First comes the background information. We have application, we have resumes, we have reference checks. And according to the textbook, a lot of resume information consists of mild puffery or outrageous fairy tales. A staggering 85% of job applicants lie on their resumes, and a huge, this is huge increase from before. So one likely reason is that job seekers are trying to outsmart applicant tracking systems by doing whatever it takes to make sure the keywords in their resumes stand out and are stated in the job requirements, whether they are the truth or not. Don't do this. That's why companies do reference checks, and they'll find out that you're lying. So do not lie on your resumes. Many companies are also finding conventional resumes are not as useful as they once were, and they are relying more on professional network sites such as LinkedIn, Video Profile, or online quizzes to assess candidates. However, our resumes are still expected, as are cover letters. Don't lie on them is all. So part of the selection process is conducting an interview. Most of us have gone through the interviewing process. After an organization has reviewed our resume and application, and they like what they see in terms of the skills and qualifications, we get a phone call for an interview. Nowadays, interviews can be conducted via video conferencing, as well as face-to-face. Interviews can be unstructured or the two can be unstructured. And the two types that we have are structured interviews, situational, and behavioral. The unstructured interview involves asking probing questions to find out what the applicant is like. There are no fixed set of questions and no systematic scoring procedure. This unstructured interview has been criticized as being overly subjective and apt to be influenced by biases of the interviewer. Equally important, it is susceptible to legal attack because some questions may infringe on non-job related matters such as privacy, diversity, or disability. However, compared with the structured interview method, the unstructured interview has been found to provide a more accurate assessment of an applicant's job-related personalities. The structured interview involves asking an applicant the same questions and comparing their responses to a standardized set of questions. This type of interview can be your typical questions that you have been asked. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so forth. Within the structured interview, there are two types. The situational focuses on hypothetical situations. So, for example, what would you do if you saw two of your people arguing loudly in the work area? The idea here is to find out if the applicant can handle difficult situations that arise on the job. The other type is behavioral description interview. This explores what applicants have actually done in the past. So, for example, they may ask the question, what was the best idea you ever sold to a supervisor, teacher, peer, or subordinates? This question is designed to assess the applicant's ability to influence others. The employment selection tests consist of paper and pencil, performance, and physical ability tests. Now, today's applicants should expect just about anything, such as spending hours on a simulated work task, performing role-playing exercises, or tackling a business case study. There are several types of tests. The first is an ability test, which measures physical abilities, strength and stamina, mechanical ability, mental abilities, and clerical abilities. Another type of test is a performance test known as a skill test, and this measures performance on actual job tasks, or so-called job tryouts. This may take place in an assessment center. We also have personality tests, and they measure such as personality traits such as emotional intelligence, social intelligence, resilience, personal adaptability, and need for achievement. And this may include career assessment tests. We also have integrity tests. These assess attitude, experiences related to a person's honesty, dependability, trustworthiness, reliability, and pro-social behavior. Among the other tests that can be done are drug testing, a polygraph, and genetic screen testing. So with any kind of test, an important legal consideration is the test's reliability, the degree to which a test measures the same thing consistently. This is important so that the individual score remains about the same over time, assuming the characteristics being measured also remain the same. Another legal consideration is test validity. The test measures what it purports to measure and is free of bias. If a test is supposed to predict performance, then the individual's actual performance should reflect his or her score on the test. Using an invalid test to hire people can lead to poor selection decisions. It also can create legal problems if the test is ever challenged in the court of law. Here are some basic definitions about the ways that employees compensate their employees. Compensation, through wages, salaries, incentives, and benefits. We have our basic pay. We have incentives that are commissions, profit sharing, bonuses, stock options, or we have other benefits such as health insurance, dental, disability, holiday, sick day, vacation days, and so forth. In different organizations, one type of compensation may take on more importance than another. For instance, in some nonprofit organizations such as education and government, salaries may not be large, but health and retirement benefits may outweigh that disadvantage. In high technology startup, the salary and benefits may actually be somewhat humble, but the promise of a large payoff in incentives such as stock options or bonuses may be quite attractive. Today, when a hire is made, companies often perform what is known as onboarding. Onboarding are programs that help companies to integrate and transition to new jobs. It also helps to familiarize new employees with corporate policies, procedures, cultures, politics, and clarify what the work role expectations and responsibilities are. Thus, a company may roll out a welcome by assigning buddies, providing detailed orientations, and even sending goodie baskets to bring rookies up to speed quickly and give them a fast introduction on culture. Orientation is another way of helping the newcomer fit smoothly into the job and the organization. It is designed to give employees the information they need to be successful. Following orientation, the employees should emerge with information about what their job routine is, what the company's mission and operations are, and the organization's rules and employee benefits. This is because, as the textbook says, the emphasis is on human capital. Only a third to half of most companies' stock market value is accounted for hard assets, your property, your plant, and equipment. Most of the firm's value is attributed to patents and process, and it is important that there is employee and customer satisfaction. So this means for helping employees, we need to perform their jobs. Orientation, training, and development are important. Of course, in hiring, an employer also tries to get people whose qualifications match the requirements on the job. Quite often, however, there are gaps in what new employees need to know. So the training process involves 5 steps: assessment, objectives, selection, implementation, and evaluation. So, what is happening, in this, getting people on board and understanding what it takes to perform their role in that organization. So within this learning and development process, there are all kinds of methods to help the new employees. One way is on-the-job training and development, and this is through learning and development by coaching, training, job rotation, planned work activities while on the job. The other method is off-the-job training, and this is development which consists of classroom programs, workbooks, videos, games, and simulations. A new approach is called micro-learning, and this segments learning into bite-sized content, enabling a student to master one piece of learning before advancing to anything else. So it is important that, in this learning and development process, we need to assess what learning is needed. Then we need to understand what should this learning and development achieve. What are the objectives of this learning and development? Then we go in with selection. Which learning and development methods should be used in order to achieve those objectives? Then we implement it. How should this learning be done? What is the most effective way to develop and to learn and train the employee? And finally, then we evaluate. Did this work? Did we reach our objectives? If not, we need to go back and reassess. So it is important to get feedback from managers on how we are doing as employees. And part of the HRM responsibility is performance appraisal, which is defined as the management process that consists of assessing an employee's performance and providing him or her with feedback. Unlike performance management, which is ongoing, interactive process between managers and employees, performance appraisal is often dictated by a date on the calendar rather than need, and is often one-sided boss-dominated assessment that comes down to whether your superior likes you, according to some critics. So performance management is a set of processes, and it consists of 4 steps. Define performance, setting the goals, and communicate the expectations, monitor and evaluate the performance, review that performance, and provide consequences. Going back to performance appraisal, an employee should be evaluated objectively and subjectively. What does this mean? Since performance appraisals do exist for a majority of workers, it is important to discuss them. There are 2 good reasons for having objective appraisals. First is they measure desired results. It doesn't matter if two appliance salespeople have completely different different personal traits. One is formal, reserved, patient, while the other is more informal, gregarious, or impatient. If each sells the same number of washers and dryers, that's what they need to point out. HR professionals need to point that out. Just as in business, we measure sales, profits, shareholder value, and these metrics, it is likewise important to measure employee performance, benefit cost, and the like to aid in strategy. The other one is the second reason for having objective appraisals is they are harder to challenge legally. Not being as subjective to personal bias, objective appraisals are harder for employees to challenge on legal grounds such as age, gender, or racial discrimination. Subjective appraisal is based on a manager's perceptions of an employee's traits and behaviors. Those traits appraisals are easy to create and use. Trait appraisals are ratings such as their attitude, their initiative, their leadership. And trait evaluations may be easy to create and use, but their validity is questionable because the evaluator's personal bias can affect the ratings. Behavioral appraisals under subjective appraisals measures specific observable aspects of performance, for example, being on time, although making the evaluation still somewhat subjective. An example is the Behavioral Anchored Rating Scale, or BARS, which rates employees in performance according to scales to specific behaviors. They have BARS has a 5-point rating scale and about maybe attendance. For example, always work and has equipment ready. They assume duties responsibly, effectively, or they're frequently late. So it's based on a scale system. So let's take a look at this question. Luann is conducting a performance appraisal on Bill. The form her company uses asks her to list the objectives that she and Bill agreed to last year and indicate how well he met each objective. Luann's company is using a blank system of performance appraisal. If you answered A, objective, you are correct. Remember, objective appraisals are based on facts and they're often numerical. So as a manager, you will promote, transfer, demote, lay off, or even fire an employee. So, first we will have to discuss the ways that employees move in and out of an organization. Promotion, we can move upward to a higher level. We can transfer. We can move sideways with similar responsibilities. We can discipline and demote, with the threat of moving downward. This could be because of poor performing employees who have already been warned, reprimanded, written up, or disciplined. Or we can dismiss. We can move them out of the organization through layoffs, downsizing, or firings. We also have what's called exit interviews. An exit interview is a formal conversation to find out why an employee is leaving and to learn about potential problems within the organization. We also have non-disparagement agreements, which is a contract that prohibits one party from criticizing the other. This is often used in severance agreements to prohibit former employees from criticizing their former employers. One company looked at exit interviews of 4 companies and learned that they told the same story. Their manager lacked critical leadership skills such as showing appreciation, engendering commitment, communicating the vision and strategy. Moreover, the organization was promoting managers on a basis of technical rather than managerial skills. Remember, to be an effective manager, we need those 3 skills. We need those conceptual, interpersonal, and those technical. We can't just have 1 or 2. They have to have all of them. And looking at this one, think about which one most managers are lacking. A departing employee may want to pound the desk during an exit interview or shout, but that's not a good idea because when we leave a company, we want to leave on a good note. We don't want to leave with, we want to make sure that our reputation is intact and we still continue with a good, valuable relationship. HRM needs to know all the laws that govern the workplace and the employees, and there are many. HR needs to be aware of labor relations, compensation, and benefits, health and safety, and equal opportunity, employment opportunity. Your organization needs to operate within the American legal system. The textbook on page 354 to 360 discusses these laws, but I just want to point out the laws that are related to the 4 areas managers need to be aware of. This table deals with labor relations, and we've already talked about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, so that one should be familiar to you. Next is compensation and benefits. Here we have the Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, a Fair Minimum Wage Act, among others. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, establishing a minimum leaving standard. So as managers, we in HR, we need to be aware of these laws and acts. Beginning with the Occupational Safety and Health Act, or OSHA, we have, that deal with understand what the legal laws and acts are under health and safety. We have these here. OSHA is a body that helps, provide employees with non-hazardous working conditions. And then we have the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is, to enforce anti-discrimination and other employee-related laws. And we have several that are pointed out here. And again, as managers, we need to be aware of these. So 3 important concepts covered in equal employment opportunity laws are workplace discrimination, affirmative action, and sexual harassment. Discrimination is, people are hired or promoted or denied hiring, promotion for reasons not relevant to their job. Or the adverse impact, we have an adverse impact as an organization uses an employment practice or procedure that results in unfavorable outcomes to a protected class. So adverse impact occurs when an organization uses this to have unfavorable acts that are to a protected class, such as Hispanics, or another group of people such as non-Hispanic whites. We have disparate treatment. Results when the employees form protected groups such as disabled individuals are intentionally treated differently, and we shouldn't do that. In recent years, pay discrepancies between women and men improved slightly, but as of 2016, women overall still earned only 80.5 cents to every dollar for a man. And as the current rate of change, it would take women 41 years, or until 2059, for women to finally reach pay parity. And we hear that nowadays in our society of, equal pay, that we should have equal pay. For women of color, the rate of change is even slower. It will take Black women up until 24 for equal pay. In 2017, among complaints to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the most frequently cited bias for charges of discrimination was retaliation, 49%, followed by race discrimination at 34%. Next is affirmative action. Affirmative action tries to make up for past discrimination in employment by actively finding, hiring, and developing the talents of people from groups of traditionally discriminated against. Affirmative action has created tremendous opportunities for women and minorities, but it also has been resisted more by some who see it as working against their interests. Affirmative action plans are more successful when employees view them as being fair and equitable, and research shows that women and minorities hired on the basis of affirmative action have sometimes felt unfairly stigmatized and as unqualified and incompetent. Finally, we have sexual harassment, which consists of unwanted sexual attention that creates an adverse work environment, and it violates the Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. There are 2 types of sexual harassment. First one is quid pro quo. It jeopardizes being hired or obtaining job benefits or opportunities unless he or she implicitly or explicitly acquiesces. Hostile environment is the other type. It doesn't risk economic harm, but experiences an offensive or intimidating work environment. To help prevent harassment from occurring, managers can make sure their companies have an effective sexual harassment policy in place. The policy should be shown to all current and new employees, who should be made to understand that sexual harassment will not be tolerated under any circumstances. A formal complaint procedure should be established, which would explain how charges will be investigated and resolved. Supervisors should be trained in Title VII requirements and the proper procedures to follow when changes occur. If changes occur, they should be investigated promptly and objectively, and if substantive, the offender should be disciplined at once, no matter what his or her rank in the company is. Bullying is an abusive physical, psychological, verbal, or nonverbal behavior that is threatening, humiliating, or intimidating. And yes, bullying in the workplace does occur. Bullying on the job has been experienced by 19% of employees, according to one survey. Another 83% of workers have witnessed or been aware of it. Bullies can be male or female, although the majority, about 70%, are men and most are bosses. Women tend to be bullied more than men, 67%, and bullying can occur between colleagues, managers, employees, but bosses are reported to be 61% of the workplace bullies. And bullying on the job can be physically aggressive. It can be, pushing, pinching, or cornering someone. However, it is more apt to be verbal, including shouting, swearing, or name calling. Or it may be relational, including malicious gossip, rumors, and lies that may cause someone to feel isolated or cut off. Bullying through technology, known as cyberbullying through Facebook, Twitter, email, accounts for 1 in 5 incidents. On page 360 in table 9.4, this provides some guidelines to help combat bullying. Let's take a look at here question number 4. Stan is constantly telling off-color jokes and using profanity in front of his administrative assistant. This can be considered, if you answered B, hostile work environment, you are correct. This is just not, not difficult or intimidating. It is hostile, and that is what we described earlier in what type of bullying that exists. This concludes Chapter 9.